In this episode of Zoomer Life,
the strange irony about dealing with people with Alzheimer's is it's not so important that people with Alzheimer's learn to remember. It's important that we learn to forget.
Zoomer Life, health, wellness, and longevity from the world's brightest minds.
My collaborator on the Zoomer philosophy, a very prolific freelance writer who appears often in the pages of Zoomer magazine, but who also dabbles on a sideline as a creator of musical comedies. He's going to tell us about his most recent work, Jay Teitel.
Well, I don't have any yoga moves to offer, but how about a little music? You can follow along with the lyrics, and I warn you, this is not the Elmer Eisler Choir. Maestro.
It's Alzheimer that ends Heimer. And just when you think you've got it made, gold watch is won and bills are paid. Kids finish college, house is clear.
Nothing to do but nurse your beer.
Well,
That's when you notice, hey there, Mac.
Don't I know you from some ways back? Well, isn't there somewhere I should be? And where's the place I take a pee? I take a pee. Well, things that you thought you knew you don't. Faces that should stay put just won't. Can't make no sense of kitchen clocks. Everyone's trying to steal your socks. To steal your socks. Well, don't sweat it and get manic. We all get it, so why panic? Must be swell, there's nothing finer. Well, it's all's well that ends Heimer.
Yes, it's Alzheimer that ends Heimer. This happens to be, actually, the opening number of a play I just wrote called a light show with music called It's Alzheimer that ends Heimer, also known as It's 12 O'Clock, Do You Know Who Your Children Are? Or Tuesdays with What's His Name? 6 characters in search of their car keys. You may notice that there's something slightly humorous about this approach to Alzheimer's, possibly black humorous, which is no coincidence. When Moses asked me to speak here today, he in the Zoomer Life Conference, he was aware that I'd written the play and that it was somewhat different in tone than most treatments of this particular ailment. And in fact, I was determined when I decided to write a play about Alzheimer's that it would have to be humorous for 3 basic reasons. One is, I know of no greater antidote to sadness and pity than humor, and in unfortunate circumstances most times, sadness and pity are the 2 sentiments which are most attendant in the universe of Alzheimer's. Nothing can take away a person's dignity more than pity, and nothing can restore it more quickly than humor. And I'm speaking here not simply of the kind of humor where you laugh with people, which is the old saw, but even humor where you laugh at people as long as it's done with love. This can be liberating, believe it or not, for the person who is suffering from the disease, and is an incredibly therapeutic, as most people who will know, who are dealing with this situation now, for the people who are caregivers or loved ones of people who have Alzheimer's. The second reason I wanted to have humor in the play was the fact that the sadness that surrounds Alzheimer's is almost invariably focused on the past. It's almost invariably focused on that which the person once was. It's a living death we hear about Alzheimer's. It's a death without death. This is a categorization, by the way, that I reject out of hand. And the one way that you can make sure that you keep a person in the present, as opposed to lamenting what they used to be, and keep them in the present so that you give them dignity and give them heft in life, is to use humor. The strange irony about dealing with people with Alzheimer's is it's not so important that people with Alzheimer's learn to remember. It's important that we learn to forget. The third reason I decided to use humor when it came to this play was that it's a tribute to my father, and who was, and I'm still convinced is in some corner of his soul, the fastest, funniest, wittiest guy I'd ever met. In fact, I forgot something here. I gotta go get it. I'm going to wear this hat over the course of the rest of my talk as a tribute to my father as well, because he no longer remembers me, but he knows the hat. Shush, there's this strange guy in the apartment who claims he's my son, but he's a head taller than I am. How can he be my son? And then he said, well, I'll tell you one thing. If this schmagegi is my son, I'm not having any more children.
Get the latest Zoomer Life news, presenter information, and watch streaming video at www.zoomerlifeconference.ca. Zoomer Life. Health, wellness, and longevity from the world's brightest minds.
For the last 10 years, he has suffered from Alzheimer's disease, my dad. In the last 5 years, he's been a resident at Baycrest Home for the Aged, just a few kilometers north on Bathurst Street, in the Apotex wing, the 6th floor, which is the Alzheimer's floor. And just to give you an idea of my father's sense of humor, 2 months before he was incarcerated, so to speak, in an institution and did not come home, he was there forever, he tried to throw me out of his condominium. And he went to the washroom to take a pee, as it happens, and when he came back, he somehow decided that he didn't know me. And I sort of forestalled him and called my mother on her cell phone and put him on the phone with her. And he said to her, Shush, there's this strange guy in the apartment who claims he's my son, but he's a head taller than I am. How can he be my son? And my mother spoke to him. I couldn't hear what she was saying. And then he said, well, I'll tell you one thing. If this schmagegi is my son, I'm not having any more children. That was my father. I'd like to introduce you to him a little bit more closely, and in fact also maybe answer a question some of you may be thinking in your mind now, and that is, there's no way I'm going to get this thing, but if by chance I should, how will I know it's happening? Good question. Let's take a look. What you're looking at here is the standard mini mental state examination, the famous MMSE. This is the test which, if someone in an expert's position should decide you are in the grip of incipient dementia, i.e. you're losing a couple of marbles, they will give to you. We could wait until you are losing a couple of marbles to take a look at the test, but who needs the suspense? We might as well look at it now. This is the first question on the test. It's made up of 12 questions, adding up to a total of 30 points. 25 to 30, if you score that on the test, that's normal. 18 to 24 signifies mild to moderate impairment. Score under 18 on this test, and it's possible that shortly you could be talking to your salad. Score under 10, and shortly you might be part of the salad. So what I suggest is, I'll ask you some of the questions on the test. You answer en masse. I'll just give you a little signal, 1, 2, 3. Bear in mind that if and when you do ever take this test, you'll be sitting across from the desk from 1, possibly 2 psychiatrists, a social worker, possibly a nurse, and an attending physician. And you'll also have surrounding you a phalanx of family members who are there to make you feel more comfortable. It doesn't always work that way. Question 1, part A, what year is this? 1, 2, 3. Very good. B, what season is this? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Wait. C, what month of the year is this? Very good. We'll do, what is today's date? Pardon? Very good. And what day of the week is this? Yeah, that's right. Thursday's right. Okay. Let's try something a little bit more challenging. We'll go to question 4 on the test. Spell the word world. 1, 2, 3. Very good. Now, without any hesitation, spell the word world backwards. 1, 2, 3. Pretty good. Not bad at all. That's very good. Now, let's go to the, oh, by the way, I should mention there are a couple of other ones you have to do also immediately that fast, like counting backwards from 100 by sevens. Dr. Mila Jovovich said, Mr. Teitel, please take this piece of paper and pencil and write a complete sentence on it. And this is what he wrote. His psychiatrist looked at it and said, that's very good. That actually is a sentence. And my father said, yes, and I'm not even sure it's legal.
Get the latest Zoomer Life news, presenter information, and watch streaming video at www.zoomerlifeconference.ca. Zoomer Life. Health, wellness, and longevity from the world's brightest minds.
Let's go to the question 12, which is the last question on the test. And here you meet my dad. This question is a task question. I can't ask you this. No one has pencils and papers. The psychiatrist or the examiner gives the subject a pencil and paper and says, write a complete sentence on this piece of paper. Okay? Now, my father was brilliant at this question. He aced it every time he took it. First 3 times, unbelievable. Fourth time he took the test, and by the way, I was going with him to his sessions. I was kind of his Freudian co-pilot at this point. But the fourth time he was getting a little pissed off because he had enough memory left that he knew vaguely he'd done this before. So he was ready to be extremely, extremely irritable. But fortunately at that particular session, his psychiatrist, his geriatric psychiatrist, had with him a psychiatric resident, a very, very pretty young woman from one of the Eastern European countries, Latvia or the Ukraine, who bore a striking resemblance to Mila Jovovich, the model and actress who co-starred with Bruce Willis in the movie The Fifth Element. Here's a picture of Mila Jovovich. So, of course, my father went from being extremely irritated very quickly to being extremely charming. And Dr. Mila Jovovich said, Mr. Teitel, please take this piece of paper and pencil and write a complete sentence on it. And my father said, a sentence? And she said, a sentence. He said, any sentence? Any sentence. He smiled at her, and this is what he wrote. Mary had a little lamb. His psychiatrist looked at it and said, Mr. Teitel, bemused. That's very good. That actually is a sentence. And my father said, yes, and I'm not even sure it's legal. I didn't know what it meant. The psychiatrist clearly didn't know what it meant, but it's obviously funny because Mila Jovovich, laughed a lot, which was a big gift to my father and to anybody, even with Alzheimer's or not. The next time my father took the test, though, Mila Jovovich wasn't there, the doctor, and it was just his psychiatrist. And by now he was really, really irritated at taking the test and agitated about it because by now he couldn't answer the questions to the test. And who likes to take a test over and over when you can't answer the questions? So when his psychiatrist asked him the first question, which you guys did, performed so well on, which is what is the year, what is the date, what is the season, he just looked at the psychiatrist and says, I haven't the faintest idea, as though the psychiatrist himself was demented for asking the question, which in fact he may have been. But when they got to the 12th question, which was the one we saw before, Mr. Teitel, the psychiatrist said, handed him a piece of paper and pencil, please write a complete sentence. My father looked at the psychiatrist for a long time. This is what he wrote, 25 years. The psychiatrist looked at my father and said, Mr. Teitel, that's not a sentence. My father said, yes, it is. He said, no, it's not. My father said, yes, it is. And the psychiatrist said, Mr. Teitel, what kind of sentence is that? And my father started to smile. It was a smile of a man who, of his ilk, has been handed the greatest gift that a man like him could possibly get. Even better than having a girl like Dr. Mila Jovovich laugh at his joke. It was the perfect straight line. And he said, the kind of sentence you should get for asking me stupid questions like this. This is a hallmark of the disease. Any rules, any order you try to impose on your behavior, their behavior, or the entire situation are quickly shattered or melt away before you even know what's happening.
Get the latest Zoomer Life news, presenter information, and watch streaming video at www.zoomerlifeconference.ca. Zoomer Life. Health, wellness, and longevity from the world's brightest minds.
This is 762 Queen Street, 762 Queen Street West, not far from where we are right now. This is a storefront. At the moment when this was taken, it was recent, and it was a design house of some sort. But when my father lived above this store on 762 Queen Street, it was a dress shop. His parents owned the dress shop. My father and his brother and sister lived in the apartment above the dress shop. As many of you will know, long-term memory in people suffering from Alzheimer's seems not only to persist, but in fact to sharpen. And so he would always love to tell stories about this, but even before he got sick, he loved to revisit this area because it had been so meaningful to him when he was growing up there as a young child in the 20s. And he would go back occasionally, periodically, to see what the store had become. The various iterations of the store, the businesses would change. One year, my father went to the store, and in fact, he found that 762 Queen Street was now a donut shop. As was his wont, he went into the shop, walked up to the woman at the counter, and said, "You may not be aware of this, but I was born in the apartment directly above this store 75 years ago." And the woman said, "So you're going to buy a donut or what?" And it was as though every day someone walked in and told her that they were attached there. But my father liked to tell this story too, that he dined out on that story for a long time. 762 Queen Street also ends up being the inspiration for a different kind of humor that is liberating and therapeutic and necessary for people dealing with Alzheimer's. Not the humor that the person with Alzheimer's, the Heimer as I call him in my play, is capable of producing, but that the people who love the people with Alzheimer's are capable of producing. And two of the people I've met in my life, and I know, who are the best at doing this, are these two people. These are my sisters, taken clearly at a younger age. The reason that they have the numbers there as though they're in mugshots is that I regard them slightly as my co-conspirators, because it was my sisters and I who drove my father to the hospital the night that my mother had to call the police to their condominium because he was throwing things and breaking things in the living room, and she had locked herself in the bedroom. She had been told when she was worried that she had to call the police when she was worried for her own safety. We took him to the hospital, from which he never went home again, so I kind of see them as my co-accomplices. The one on your right, that's my older sister. She was a genius at the kind of humor that you can produce when you have someone you love who has this disease. In particular, a genius at obeying the second commandment of Alzheimerdom. The first one, in my mind, being never pity someone with Alzheimer's. The second, never correct someone with Alzheimer's. There is no point in correcting someone who has Alzheimer's disease or dementia. All you can accomplish is make them feel like an idiot. So it's best to go along with their story of the world and buy into it and believe it. And you may find something liberating in that, because who is to say that their story of the world is any less valid than the one you're telling yourself? To go back to 762 Queen Street, one day, for example, my father got it into his head that my older sister had moved downtown and had opened a dress store, very much like the one his parents had owned, downtown as well. My sister, in fact, had moved downtown, but she was still a kindergarten teacher and had no intention of getting into the textile business. But my father was convinced that she had, and so she went along with it perfectly. And every time we went to visit him in Baycrest, he would say to her, "So, Naomi, how's the store?" And she would say, "Well, I'm making a living, I'm comfortable, thanks for asking." And this went on for a really long time. And then one day, we went to visit him, and he said, "Naomi, how's the store?" And she said, "Dad, I got to tell you something. I decided to sell the store." And he was astounded. She said, "Really? You decided to sell?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm going to sell it." And he said, "Well, you know best. You're a good businesswoman, obviously. You've been making a go of it so long. Whatever you would decide is okay." On the way out, when we finished visiting with him, I was kind of stunned too. I was puzzled. I said to my sister, "Noam, so why did you decide to tell him at this point that you put the store in the market? Did you get tired of pretending?" And she said, "No, I got tired of selling dresses." And that's someone who is really, really capable of investing themselves in the world of a person who has a different reality. You may have noticed at this point that I might seem to be violating two of my great rules, one against reflection and wistfulness or sadness when it comes to someone who has Alzheimer's. Clearly, this is a hallmark of the disease. Any rules, any order you try to impose on your behavior or their behavior or the entire situation are quickly shattered or melt away before you even know what's happening. In fact, in my play, there is a character called the goddess Demencheva. I call her the Deus Ex Mental Cases. And she's actually based her name on an actual Russian tennis player named Elena Demencheva, who my father loved to watch, even after he got sick. And I assumed it was because of the irony of her name. Here she is. Maybe it wasn't the irony of her name. But at any rate, the goddess Demencheva has a little piece of advice that she gives to the narrator at the end of the play, the narrator who also wears a hat, by the way, and also inveighs vigorously against pity. She tells him that not all sadness is pity. Some sadness is necessary. Some sadness releases you and lets you get on with your day. And in keeping with the goddess Demencheva's advice, here's one last slide. The guy doing the swinging, that's my dad. The guy being swung is me. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Let's get a picture.